Awesome. Well, good afternoon, officially, everybody. We're so excited to welcome everybody to this State Board of Education Lunchtime Live, our second Lunchtime Live event, virtual event, to talk about issues important to education. I'm Marcus Batchelor, and I'm proud to serve as both the Ward 8 representative and vice president of the State Board of Education, where I get to represent 16,000 kids and families here in Ward 8, but all DC kids. And we are exceptionally excited to be hosting a conversation today about an issue that I care about a lot, especially, which is community schools. And so we have both amazing folks doing work and experience in community schools here locally, but also doing the advocacy and building support for the model nationally. And we're excited to have them here today. We also want you all to engage with us throughout this hour, throughout this lunchtime conversation. So as you have conversations about community schools and the community school model for any of our panelists today, please do drop them in so that we have them and that we're able to answer them a little later on in the conversation. For those of you, and we'll learn a lot about the community school model today, but for those of you who just need a short primer on the community school model, community schools are both a place and a set of partnerships that for schools not only make them a hub for high quality instruction, but also make them a hub for the resources that students and families and quite frankly communities need to be successful. Bringing all the resources of both community organizations and government and the ingenuity of the school community to really fill in gaps that our students need to be successful academically, but also successful in life. And so we're excited to have joining us today Principal Pilgrim, who is leading a community school here in our city at Birdville Elementary. One of her parents, Ms. Jackson, who's a Birdville parent of two Birdville students, right, Ms. Jackson?
Yes, correct.
Awesome. And Jose Munoz, who is from the Institute of Educational Leadership, but also leads the Coalition for Community Schools, helping school districts across the country expand the impact of community schools in every section of the city and in communities that need it. So let's jump right into the conversation. We're excited to have you all here today, and we'll just start by giving everybody a few minutes to just talk about their experience with community schools and why, in your thoughts, why the community school model is important. And so I guess we'll start with Principal Pilgrim at Birdville. Thank you so much for joining us and for the transformative work that you're leading at Birdville. So why don't you talk talk to us a little bit about um, why a community school model at Birdville, what your community school looks like, and what are some of the challenges that maybe some of your families and students face that you are trying to fill with the community school model.
Good afternoon, everyone. Um, for my experience,
Lean in a little bit more, Principal Pilgrim. Sorry.
yeah, you probably heard the bell louder than me. Can you hear me? Is this better now? Is this much better? Okay, great. Community in schools has been a wonderful partnership with our schools. It has opened doors, became bridge builders for our families and our community. And I could just go on just to say how wonderful their connection has been for us. This is my fourth year here at Burrville. However, this is my first year as principal. And in my first year, having the support of having like resources available for our families in need has been incredible. Our parents have been experiencing things as far as homelessness, job loss, just many different hardships. And community schools has really relied as resources, has been a resource for our families, getting them connections with food banks, getting them connections with just different centers that may be helpful for them as they're experiencing these challenges. As far as the school is concerned, with our students on a day-to-day basis, we've been able to
Principal Pilgrim, you're going a little bit in and out. If you could lean in a little more, I apologize.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if I should call, but I might call in later on. That might be what I need to do. I wanted just to say that as far as our students, this year our enrollment has increased because of the partnerships that we have with community and schools. Ms. Smith has been invaluable in her work and effort. She's the liaison for our grant that we have, and she's been helping, really helpful with making our enrollment goals, our academic goals have been reached. Our suspensions have decreased. We had zero suspensions right before COVID. We had for the whole month of, I want to say October was the last time we had any type of suspensions. We didn't have any suspensions from October up until March, and that is because of the incredible work that's been going on a day-to-day basis. It's a commitment, and I think that they have more than anything else have seen how commitment and consistency has drawn our students increase in education. They want to be here. They're excited to come to Burrville. They see that there's no other place like the Ville on the Hill, and it's because of the partnerships. Also, our attendance has increased as well. We've met and exceeded our attendance goals right before COVID. We're at 98% of our monthly attendance. Again, that is because of the partnerships that we've had, and it's because of our commitment to our students. Again, this is my fourth year here at Burrville, and we have met so many goals just based on our partnership. We've had monthly incentives with our students. They get PBIS. We have this year we've incorporated a game room where our students are able to spend some time in the game room as a way to decrease any type of level of anxiety. They may not want to go outside. They may want to just stay inside.
So announcement time, huh, Principal?
I am at school. I am not at home. So in true school fashion, we're still having announcements. We couldn't find folks. Bells will still be ringing. I'm committed. We still have students that have to pick up work packets. So I'm here to make sure that they're getting work packets and device distribution. So I am still here. But just wanted just to share those things with just with you all as far as what this has meant for our school. We have met and exceeded goals that we set out at the beginning of the school year, and it is because of the partnership that we've had, the way that we're able to plan monthly incentives. Parents are in our buildings every month. We're celebrating our students through honor programs and honor awards. We're able to celebrate and highlight the great things that are happening, and it is because of the partnership that we've had with community and schools. So I have to call. They're telling me to call. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. A principal's job is never done, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
But I'm going to call in, so I guess someone else can go ahead. I'm going to call in.
All right. Well, thank you, Principal Pilgrim, and again for the transformative work you're doing. I think you illustrated perfectly the real impact that a community school done with fidelity, when the whole community is really bought into the vision, how it can really transform school communities and build the type of culture that's needed to really make students academically successful. So you talked about, right, all of those indicators, right? Parent engagement is up, attendance is up, right? Student satisfaction is up. All of those things are super important to a well executed community school model. And I guess that segues perfectly into our conversation with Jose. Just tell us a little bit about your work advocating at the Coalition for Community Schools around building the capacity for the community school model and really advocating for it as a tool that works, that's research driven and is proven to increase the supports for students, but also increase those indicators that make students academically successful.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcus, and great start, Ms. Pilgrim. Great start. I'd love to see you in the school and the school bells happening too. Quick little background on me, because I kind of grew up community schools without even knowing it was community school. My mom was a Chicago public school teacher. She's retired now. And early on, I would visit her classroom when I was younger in my teens, and she would be facilitating the classroom with multiple parents and multiple roles, just really surrounding themselves with the children there. That went over into our neighborhood. So growing up on the south side of Chicago, a lot of things going on the south side of Chicago. So how we kept safe in our neighborhood was through our community. The elementary school down the street did a great job of engaging all the parents, and the educators and parents would work together. Everything from block parties to, back in those days, bread and cheese lines, so you can imagine everything in between from there. So just really growing up with that context as I grew up in my career, I began to do some community school coordinating in the 90s without it being called that. And that had led to one thing after the next, to having a great opportunity to live here in Washington, D.C. right now in this role at the Institute for Educational Leadership. Real brief about IEL for short. So IEL's been around for 55 years now, and began out of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And so our big role in this game is to really prepare leaders for that collaboration we talk about, to support them through any professional development, technical assistance, and coaching, and mobilize them when it comes time to actually change something. So the coalition, the Institute for Educational Leadership, actually is the coordinating partner in the spirit of community schools for the coalition. So it's an alliance of multiple partners locally, statewide, and nationally, that actually believe that public schools should be the very centers of creating a flourishing community where people feel like they belong and that they're working together, and that everybody begins to thrive when they do that. So you did a great job, Marcus. You did a great job on the definition. I'm hearing an echo. I don't know why. There you go. You did a great job on the definition of community schools, but let me explain a little bit and use this context we're in right now, COVID-19, and why we have an opportunity to do this Cisco WebEx meeting with everyone. So these are things that we normally wouldn't even thought of if it was during this time. We probably would still be sitting in a boardroom somewhere having this conversation, and now to get a chance to actually make this conversation global. So yes, during this time, there has been some challenges. There's a ton of stress, which I'm sure we're going to hear from Ms. Jackson as far as being a parent in this time. But there are educators out there too who all of a sudden got cut off from doing what they would love to do, what they went to school to do, and they did on a daily basis. And they had to totally switch focus on that. There were families being disconnected from the very supply and support chains that they needed, from breakfast and lunch, but relationships also, from health, physical health, from their children and themselves, parents actually receiving mental health solutions for them. So out of school time, who's going to watch my kids when I go to work, or when I go back to work, has been disrupted and disconnected during this time as well too. So the power of community schools, why community schools have, what I've learned over the last 2 months now, since March 12th, March 17th, we started doing some town halls on a weekly basis. Town hall Tuesdays at 2:00. Yeah, I'm pretty corny in that. And so where it began was the many different challenges that folks have been seeing from that type of disconnection, and even to the point where some people couldn't even find children for a while because they had been disconnected from the physical place of school itself, to all the technology issues that we talk about. Never mind the learning, but what we also learned, when you have a person who we call a community school coordinator for general sense, whose job it is to wake up every day and work with people to find those who need us most, and actually include them in being part of the solution as well too. So they're coordinating not only the care for people, but they're also coordinating the creation of opportunities for them to actually come out of this. The care part, for example, I know one of the schools, oh my goodness, Langley Elementary School, Dwayne. I know that when DCPS decided to close schools on the 13th, within an hour, organized 8 bins of supplies and food in a distribution chain in order to get that to families, among other things. You know, at Cardoza, they began the coordinator over there, I'm forgetting her name right now, but the coordinator over there began to set up family engagement for folks. In Buffalo, New York, you know, to this day now, they have every Saturday 3-hour sessions engaging thousands of families in one day across 20 plus schools in the district. In New York, you talk about systems in there. They have 267 community schools, but 100 of them were actually built and already ready for to provide childcare for essential employees going to fight this battle that we have with the coronavirus to watch and care for their children. So what we've learned is, much like you defined community schools, is the real power and the difference community schools make. And I'll just say this too: it's not the exact quote, but the superintendent over in Baltimore, who now has 75 community schools, but they already had 45 that had the structure in place where they can have a continuum of care and creation of some opportunities and some thought processes to how do we reopen schools. That superintendent is saying, I don't know what I would have done if we didn't have that system of community schools in place across Baltimore, our neighbor right there. So what this has highlighted over the last 2 months is the real core purpose of community schools. And that core purpose is really to address intergenerational poverty through education. Yes, we do things as far as supply needs, but the real purpose is to bring families and include them and get them to a space where I'm a parent of 5 myself, can ease some stress, but also know that my child has this new trajectory in their life that's going to be better than mine. And that's what my mom was all about, raising 4 of us by herself as a single parent and a teacher in the South Side of Chicago. And I know that's every other parent's desire also. Ms. Jackson, I'm sure she'll attest to that. But what is also highlighted is the true functions of a community school. Yes, there's food, there's family engagement, thing of that. But a coordinator's biggest role is collaboration. We got to work together, especially in crisis like this, but we got to work together every single day. The coordination of the thoughts that come out of that, and always the continuous improvement. We got to keep thinking of a better way every day and not get stuck on what worked yesterday or what is now, but moving forward for our children and providing a future for them. So I'll stop right there because that's a lot.
No, that's right, and I want to thank you and IEL for the work that you do to really support our school leaders around the country in doing that work. And I think you're right, and I won't talk too long about it. But when I started on the State Board of Education 3.5 years ago, I think DC had some, whereas Baltimore had dozens of community schools running at that time, I think DC had 8 dozen running at the time. And I pushed really hard to make sure that we doubled down on those investments to expand the community school model further across the city. And so I'm glad that, in through both federal dollars, but also local dollars, that schools like, Anacostia and Ballou are getting what are called connected schools money, but for all intents and purposes are community schools. And so we're seeing the expansion of the model. And that's because of, one, the work that you all are doing, but I learned about community schools because I attended a panel because someone from IEL was there and explained it. And so you guys are doing work and that ripples out. And so I do want to absolutely thank you for that. And I had to I had to take about 40 community and education leaders around the city on a bus trip up to Baltimore to see how the community school worked. And when they came back, the conversation started churning. So I'm super excited that the idea is spreading. It's because of work that you're leading and doing. So thank you.
Appreciate you and your leadership too. Thank you.
Absolutely, Ms. Jackson. How are you? So you are a Burrillville parent. You are experiencing firsthand the benefits of the community school model. Why don't you talk to us a little bit? I guess you're a parent and now a teacher parent as well. During the COVID pandemic. But can you tell us a little bit about why you chose Burrillville, what the benefits in your mind to the model have been for you and your young people since you've been a part of the Burrillville family, and then maybe a little bit about what advice you might give other parents as they're choosing schools and why a community school might be the best choice for them.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Jackson. Can you hear me? Okay. I chose Burrillville Community School because I really looked up Burrillville. Like I looked up the teachers and see how far their education went back, how they were really involved with the community, their testing scores, their reading scores, how they went from a 3.0 school to a 4.5 school and still growing. that was basically my reason for sending my kids to Burville. But while at Burville, I have experienced a lot of good stuff that I never thought I would experience from a DC public school. They have helped with domestic violence, employment, children out acting out, not trying to do what they're supposed to be doing. They're really hands-on. They talk to you. They're involved. If you ever have a problem, you can go to Miss Pilgrim. She can be in the middle of a meeting. She'll tell you, give her 5 minutes. She'll write down what she has a problem with, and she'll call you before the day's out. There's never been a problem that I had at that school that I never had ironed out, basically. There's been times where I've came in under distress as a parent, and the children are fine, and someone has recognized and pulled me to the side and like, Mom, are you okay? You're not seeming right today. What's going on? So at the community school, you get a lot out of it. They help with the children. My children are not feeling an area. My 4-year-old has went from I don't want to go to school to right now she asks me every day, Mom, when's school going back? She loves getting online. She loves doing her Lexia. It's kind of hard with the 5th grader because he's in that teenage age. He really doesn't want to do anything, but he wants to go back to Burville. He's going to middle school. He doesn't want to go to middle school. Social justice was his choice, yay. But he wants to go back to Burville. But I try to let him know, like, growing up, you still can go back to Burville because they're community schools. They always need your help and support to help with the little 4-year-olds coming in. Your sister will be there for a couple of years. Go and help. My experience with Miss Pilgrim has been excellent. When I first started at Burville, I know my face is teary because this is how I started. Now that I'm with Burville, I'm like this all day. Burville has set me from here to over and beyond. Community school is really good. They can help out a parent. They reach out. If any problems going on inside the school, they notify you. I want to speak on an issue. I'm not going to bring it up too much, but a health issue went on, and they were notified that we were never notified about it. We were notified about it that Friday before it went out to the public. I'm not sure if every parent goes into their child book bags every day. That's something that we all need to do as parents, even though our kids are getting older. The older kids really need the more, let me see your book bag more than the little kids because they have stuff that they have to do, projects. And a lot of them don't come home and want to do it once they leave school because most of their energy is at school. They get the hands-on, they get the learning, they get the homework, they get the food, they get the love and support. At home, you get it too, but you get it more from school when you're there 8 hours a day. A lot of kids are missing out. Like, I have been helping feed certain children in the neighborhood because Miss Pilgrim has helped feed me when we first started. So it's a lot of different things going on in this pandemic with this coronavirus, but Birdville is still there to help. I can call Miss Pilgrim at 12 o'clock at night and she'll respond back to my text message.
No, I appreciate that. I think that's a very powerful testimony to the impact. I think you got Principal Pilgrim over there a little too, but
There's some story. There's some story behind that right there, huh? I see them tearing up, man. That's some good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's some stories.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you illustrated perfectly just the deep and meaningful impact that this model can have. And it's not just even about, right, it's centered around the philosophy of schools being the centers of community. And I think you explained that so well, that our students and families spend so much time in the school building. And to the extent to which those supports are critical for family success, where you can find it in a safe space with folks you can trust and lean on, is invaluable. And so I really thank you for that story. And I guess we'll circle back to you, Principal Pilgrim. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's clear, right, that you all are leading transformative and impactful work. And I know you talked a little bit about some of the partnerships that made that work possible. But can you just speak a little more about kind of, and I know that, right, community schools evolve over time, but can you talk a little bit more broadly about some of the issues that, folks in your community, that the Burville community faces more broadly, and a little bit about how you're addressing some of those needs inside the building? I think you're, so you called in, right? You just got to unmute your phone, I think. Uh-oh.
Can
Oh,
y'all
there
hear
you
me?
go. Yep.
You can hear me? Okay, okay. I wanted to just to start by saying thank you to Ms. Jackson. I didn't know that she was even going to say all of those things, and I just appreciate just her vulnerability and just her willingness to just share just some of her experiences. It's authentic and it's just from the heart. And I think that I'm a DC native, so I've been here my whole life, and I'm committed to DC. I'm committed to our kids doing well. And so I feel like with me, what you see is what you get, meaning that it's in me to do. So I feel like we're going to create partnerships because these are human beings. These are people. These are lives. Like, they are not just numbers that we have to get as far as people in the building. These are people, and I feel like community and schools, our partnerships with Ms. Smith, we're able to see people first. We're able to see moms first. We're able to see kids first and not anything else. And then we're able to address the needs, because we know before instruction can start, we really have to get at what is really going on. Like, people are coming in with issues. Like, they have real life things happening. People are losing their jobs. There are people that are fleeing, going to different neighborhoods because of domestic violence, because of violence in general. And I feel like before we can even address them academically, we have to meet those needs. And I feel like communities and schools gives us the space to do that. And it gives us the space and the resources to address those needs without it being well, we got to get this academic rigor in place. We got to teach this lesson. We're going to get there. And trust and believe, we didn't go from a 2-star to a 4-star without addressing academic rigor. But we also recognize that these are human beings. They have needs and address, and they're going to excel. Some of the things that we have to do is remove barriers. And in removing those barriers, we're able to get to the core of our students. And that's what we're here to do. And so, yes, you're seeing the commitment of lifelong partnerships. And so we were able to have a middle school night for Ms. Jackson's oldest son, Sayer, who is facing, those challenges as far as becoming a middle school. But we are addressing the whole child. And community and schools gives us the opportunity to do so. Where my budget from DCPS is limited, I feel like I'm able to tap into a different resource to help reach those needs that I'm unable to do with the budget that I receive from DCPS. And so I'm grateful knowing that I'm able to get those addressed. Ms. Smith has been a great liaison as far as tapping into resources that she's available to get at on a quick basis, on a very, very quicker basis than I am in some cases, because of the need of 315 students. She's able to help hone in on specific students and able to address it right away and get answers right away. Sometimes it's as simple as a phone call. She's able to make one phone call and things are done. For example, we had a student last week whose house was on fire and all of her valuables were gone, all of them. She has no pictures, nothing. And so we were able to make a call to Ms. Smith, and Ms. Smith was able to make a call, and we were able to get some resources together for this one student and their family. So I just feel like it just really broadens and expands the reach that we're able to give and to provide to our families that are in need. Academics is going to happen. Our teachers are trained and they are ready. However, we have other barriers that we have to address, and I really believe wholeheartedly that community and schools gives us the resources that we need to help support it and make it happen.
Absolutely. I think that's a super important segue. I think, you are clearly a critical part of the success of your school's community school model. But I think you alluded to it, right, that the work is not just done by you alone, that it really takes everybody in the school building, your entire staff leaning into that philosophy and that vision and doing all they can to fill those gaps. And so I'll go over to Jose to talk. And I know you talked a little bit about the critical role that community school coordinators play. But can you talk a little bit more about that, but also talk about how you're advising schools and school districts to also build in, right, teacher development and teacher leadership, right, that might be important to the execution of the model as well.
Well, let me say, I love your passion, Ms. Pilgrim. And, you guys are gonna get me tearing up. So on this call, I just feel it. I live next door to DC's largest men's homeless shelter. So I talk to my homeboys in the morning when I walk my dogs and see what's happening. So I feel you when you talk about that. Yes. far as teaching and learning, I believe Ms. Pilgrim wholeheartedly. Teachers are already trained up. They already care. They wouldn't be in that role that they're in. I think with principals like Ms. Pilgrim, one thing that we learn is that this is more of a mindset in being able to open up your school for collaboration. The coordinator role in that, and the principal's ability to work closely with their coordinator to be inclusive in their leadership, including educators. Nobody's going to know how to teach kids better than educators. That's what they went to school to learn to do. That's what they do on a day-to-day basis. So you need that voice. Nobody's going to know their children better than the mothers like Ms. Jackson, the parents out there. You bring them into the conversation. Once you begin to learn that, you begin to figure out who the partners are who also need to be at the table to address the one-by-one issues or barriers that Ms. Pilgrim is talking about. And the coordinator's role is to continue to monitor that. That's why I call it a coordinator. They are facilitating the collaborative process to do exactly what Ms. Pilgrim said, to make sure Ms. Jackson, what she voiced about her children, and how they feel when they come to school, puts her in a place where she can trust what's happening in the classroom. She is seeing the product. We're hearing the product of that. One thing I learned from my role and get a chance to interact with many different partners who do community schools, United Ways, Communities in Schools, other nonprofits that are doing it, cities, school districts doing it. The thing I've learned, especially right now during the COVID crisis we're in, is that the system has to catch up to the coordination that's happening on the ground level. They need what you talked about earlier, Marcus. What I'm hearing is that we need systems to collaborate just like we're trying to collaborate. Because the barrier is when the politics, it's an old African proverb I like to say when they talk about this. When the elephants fight, the grass gets hurt. And so they are working hard together, parents, teachers, coordinators, community partners, to do that in their neighborhood, and they can make change. But we have to support them from the system to not have people fight to design it. So I'll say this because I live here in DC and nobody pays my salary. So I'll just be real because it's a live conversation. And it's two good things happening in DC. We have the funding of community schools, and we have the funding of connected schools. Now, what I hear from teachers is the confusion of what it is, and you talked about itself, was essentially the same thing. They're being supported by the same people. The only separation is the funding stream and who's doing it. So I think what we can do as a system is how do we begin those resources together and make them flexible enough so teachers and principals and coordinators and community partners and family members and students, when they're at that right age and when they're younger, you can still ask them, can do their own solutions and instruct us of how to create more policies and funding to support whatever that needs to be so that they're better off.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I want and I know this is a conversation, so I want everybody to feel free to jump in. But I think you mentioned it about midway through, right? The impact, and you mentioned it in your opening, that the impact and challenges that our current, right, the current COVID-19 pandemic is having, right, on our schools in particular, but also around the programming and the supports that are provided through a community school model. But I want to just get it from a parent's perspective, Ms. Jackson. Can you describe to us kind of some of the challenges that you and probably parents all over our city are facing during the current pandemic, and maybe how the community school model at Burville is helping you fill some of those gaps?
My first issue was losing my job. I've been helped on that issue on getting stuff in my house that I needed from Burville. My second issue was technology. My kids had internet, but the baby has broke everybody's tablet. But Ms. Pilgrim has helped me get a tablet and a computer so both of them can get online. My second issue was my kids not wanting to go to bed and get online. I talked to Miss Smith and she put a couple of bugs in the kids' ears. Nothing bad, some sweet stuff. But it kind of helped them to go to bed at night so they can get up and get online for their classes. I've been sick, not with coronavirus, but with a cold. It kind of was scary, but I got some help from a teacher at the school, Miss White, my daughter's fourth grade teacher, just with some little home remedies to make me feel better to be able to get up with the kids. My biggest issue right now are the children. They're driving me. They're driving their so crazy. The 4-year-old has so much energy. I'm not sure where this energy came from or when it's going to stop, but it's there. It's basically keeping them busy and not letting them go outside, and they can't go to the playground. So we've tried the bike ride, and I've tried the walk-in. We do game night. We do lesson time. It's really crazy, but it's really helpful to have the school there. So if anything goes wrong, I pick up my phone and I call one of my teachers, my principal, someone. Can someone help me with these children? It's school hour. I'm about to go crazy. Something needs to happen. And they're always there. Like, they might take a minute to respond. They might not. But when they respond, it's always a great answer. They're always helping. I have a parent in a neighborhood that I'm not sure that Miss Pilgrim knows. That child goes to Burville, and they kept saying, "Well, I can't get in touch with them. I can't get in touch with them." I said, "Well, just walk to the school. They're in the building." Then he called me. He's like, "Oh yeah, I got in the building. I bet you he did, because Miss Pilgrim's want to make sure her children have everything they need while they're at home." She calls and she texts. Even all my teachers call and text weekly to make sure the kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And when they're not, they call me Miss Jackson. Is everything okay on your end? Because Sayer or Saray didn't get online. And I like it. It's helpful. We just need to get out of this. I'm tired of wearing my mask. I'm tired of being locked in this house.
It's coming. It's coming.
It is. Yeah, I know. Hopefully it's coming. But no, that's absolutely right. And Principal
But Marcus,
Pilgrim, I think from what. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Marcus, one thing I caught though from Miss Jackson, she said, "I'm tired of these kids." So that's a sign right there. I don't. Yes, technology is great, and we need that. But we will be back in schools. Parents be like, "So teachers, hold on, it's coming." You know,
Right.
parents, hold
Right.
on.
That's right. That's right. Hold on. So, I mean, Principal Pilgrim, it seems like, you all are, I mean, clearly you're still in the building. You're still filling these gaps, right, the best way you can during this pandemic. But, the school year is coming to an end in a couple weeks. But just describe to us, right, like, while it seems like you and your staff are doing tremendous work, what are some of the challenges you're facing, executing a community school model and program during the pandemic? And then on top of that, just describe to us what a virtual community school looks like right now.
First ever, right? First ever virtual community schools. For me, I think the biggest challenge that I have is that I can't see my kids' faces. I miss them. I miss all 315 of my kids. I've missed them all. And so it's hard not having that human connection with them, and the hugs in the morning. I typically stand out front every morning to greet the families, and not having the little people to give hugs to is a challenge for me. So being in this empty building is a challenge. Yes, we have people coming in, to get packets, but it's not the same as having the 315 students all in the building, going to class, and just being. So that's the biggest challenge. Also, another challenge is just like Ms. Jackson was saying, like, some families don't know how to get connected still. And so, like, we're here. And I want to make sure that we do robocalls. We tell teachers to reach out. We reach out, but there's still some type of disconnect with some of them. So we're not 100% with everybody being online. And I think that's been a challenge because virtual learning is different. And so it's different to get connected. We have people that have different levels of tech savviness, and they may not feel comfortable, like, I don't want my house exposed. You know what I mean? Some people feel like that. Some people feel like, the time, it's just a lot of those different things. And I think that as time progresses, they'll get more comfortable. So I know that at the beginning, when we first closed, it was a big hesitation. I think now folks are becoming more understanding and acceptable of technology and the use of it. And it is different. It's weird talking to a screen and seeing faces here. At the same time, I know I looked on some of the chats with the students. They're happy to get reconnected with their students. So it's a challenge of a different way of learning. But I feel like we're making strides from where we once started back in March to now where we are here in May, near the end of the school year.
Yeah, and I can imagine that you already being a community school probably put you in a slightly better position to meet some of these challenges than maybe some of your counterparts around the city. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Can we hear a little bit about that, Marcus? Can we hear about what have you heard from some of your counterparts that aren't?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Pilgrim, what are some of your peers saying that are in community school? What have you noticed different?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What have you noticed different from you being already established community school compared to those who aren't established as a community school? What has been some of the differences?
Yeah. Just the relationship as far as this is nothing new for us to call families and to check in to see how things are going and what the need is. This is not anything new for us. And so I have cluster meetings with other principals where this is a conversation where they're like, well, I don't know how to reach it. I don't know what to say, and I don't know how to make this conversation happen. We're already ahead of them in strides as far as communication. I think that they already know that we try to make ourselves as accessible as possible. Each of us have a team, a caseload of folks that we call and talk to. Ms. Smith, our coordinator, she's been vigilant, making sure she's checking in with families and checking in with different people. And I feel like we're ahead because of other people that I talk to in the community, as far as other principals at other schools. They're not doing what we're doing. They're not, and not to throw any shade or anything, they're having troubles of having to navigate these kinds of conversations. They don't know what the need is. They haven't had a pH level or a temperature check before they left out, whereas we were already in this kind of routine of checking in with families, seeing how things are going, knowing what the needs are. So we already knew right away, who do we need to follow up with? Who do we need to make sure gets devices right away? Who do we need to make sure are connected to food banks and different areas? We already kind of knew what the need was. And so we were not spending a lot of time troubleshooting that. We already knew, and we already had a plan in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a super important perspective. And I'm also sure that as we come out of this crisis, and I think school leaders and communities and families and school and education leaders begin to realize that these needs are going to have to be met inside school buildings, that prayerfully there'll be more resources given to implementing this model across schools. Now, Jose, you're doing this national work, but you also live here in the district, and so I'm assuming to a certain extent you get a closer front row seat to some of the community school models here in the city. But we also live in a very diverse educational landscape, right? Where there are some schools in our city where most of the families come from the immediate neighborhood, where there are also some schools where families are coming from all over the city. I also imagine that, and I'm trying to make sure I include some of the language from our audience questions, but I also assume that for charter LEAs, for instance, there are large, right, charter LEAs, but there are also smaller ones, and I assume that the smaller ones would also have particular challenges behind giving the resources and funding and implementing the community school model. So, do you have any advice for school communities who might want to build this up as they begin to transition back into the classroom, and kind of how some of those different nuances impact the way we might be able to scale up and support students?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, DC is a pretty diverse and different situation that I've lived in, and this is my 12th city I've lived in. So in there, so some of the advice I give just to start is what I'll lean on what Ms. Pilgrim was saying, that we already knew what our families wanted. So creating the space where they can lean in and listen to what family members are going to, and a good place to start with that, because sometimes depending on the size of your school, it could seem very large. Use your data. You know, if people aren't coming, there's a problem. If people have been moving around to school to school to school, regardless of how the system is set up, there's probably some deeper issues there. Start with them, and then invite them to the table to be part of the thinkers of some of the solutions. So you could do that without a coordinator right now. You know, then at some point though, because I'm sure Ms. Pilgrim would agree, she has a much broader role. You'll need someone who's going to focus in on coordinating from what was said and inviting the other partners to the table, keeping the family members to the table, keeping the educators at the table, and begin to put together a plan of how you're going to address that quickly. Because those family members, the voice you may have just listened to, could be gone next week. So how do you begin to quickly act on that? So the coordinating piece, so first the collaborating piece, eventually going to have to do the coordinating piece, and then setting up a cadence where that type of discussion happens frequently. You know, whether it be weekly or every other week. I'm a fan as often as possible. Going back to Chuck Noll and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and saying something like, you know, we don't got to do everything extraordinarily. We only have to do the ordinary things extraordinarily well. And so some of those ordinary things are continue to meet, continue to meet, continue to discuss, continue to test your hypothesis from listening, continue to improve upon and build upon that. And it will begin to scale very quickly with the cadence that you create. There's something that takes time, and that's all of us as people, and that's changing our minds and coming out of what's comfortable. So there aren't many Miss Pilgrims. So I think principals who's going to start this, you have to test your own self, and why are you in that role? Is it because you just kind of climbed the ladder and then that was your next step? Or is it because that's your next opportunity to serve your greater purpose and why you even began teaching? And so I think it's principals think as Ms. Pilgrim do, it creates the space so Ms. Jackson her child doesn't have to worry about going from elementary school to middle school, because then she'll know and be comfortable with throughout DC that you're going into the next community school. They're in some phase of development, and we as a family, we're going to be part of that too.
Absolutely. And speaking of parent transitions, Ms. Jackson, you said you got a young one moving on to middle school, moving out of a community school. In your search, right, in your enrollment for a new school, what was getting your young person into a community school at top of mind? And I know, right, the lottery process is complicated, but what were you looking for, given your experience in this community school? What were you looking for in a new school for your young person?
Communication. That's the start. If I'm a hands-on parent, so I always love communication. I can get a teacher, a principal, administrator, anyone to have a conversation with me. I know the school is going to be a good school to start with. With social justice, I think what dragged us in was at the middle school night, the way they spoke with him, the things they told him they have going on, like they're STEM school, they're hands-on. There's a guy there named Reggie. I'm not sure his last name. I'm not sure what he does. He might be a coordinator. He's hands-on all times, even now. Like he calls Sire once a week to make sure he's doing what he needs to do and he's ready to go to middle school. They have conversations. He's even introduced him to a young man that's going to be enrolling next year too. So Sire has a friend going into middle school. But with Burville on the back of social justice, I believe I'm going to still be good because I'm still getting calls to make sure he's doing what he's supposed to do. So he's frightened. I'm more frightened because I'm scared. You know, the older they get, the more they just don't want to listen to nothing. But I'm ready to go to middle school. I'm ready for the transaction to happen. I hope you don't have to wear masks, but I'm ready.
That's right. And I think it's really important that you underscore, right, that the beauty of a community school is it doesn't stop and end at the four walls of a school building, right? That it continues right beyond the school day, it continues beyond the school year and beyond the student's matriculation. And so the fact that you find a resource, right, even as your student moves on, even though you've got one still there, you know, the fact that you still feel like you're going to be okay no matter what is a beautiful thing. I want to make sure I get to some more audience questions, and we've got quite a few submitted. And thank you, Caitlin, for texting them to me from our team. Um, let's see. Uh, let's talk about. So I know there's been a lot of conversation about the particular challenges and traumas that some of our students are facing as a result of the pandemic, and I think the high capacity that our school system is going to have to prepare for that as our students begin to transition back into the classroom. So, Principal Pilgrim, how is your school preparing for that? How are you filling some of those gaps now? And Jose, maybe you have some advice for schools as they prepare to transition back into the classroom as well.
Yeah, so currently our teachers are receiving, they receive mental health like training on Fridays. And it's a partnership that we have with through DBH through April, May, and they are providing our teachers with grief and loss, anxiety, self-care, as they are managing this as well. And we feel like if they're in a good space, then it's going to transfer to our kids. So we're making sure that they are like they have check-ins for their mental health and well-being. I'm launching my leadership team starting next week once school settles down a little bit as we're closing out, to start thinking about plans together on how are we going to unpack and roll out the school year. That may mean a 6-week boot camp, a 6-week boot camp that we're going to have for our students as far as like recognizing and having space for them to recognize what just happened and what they just survived through and how that changed. I think that it would be a disservice to ignore that this didn't happen and just act like business as usual. That would be a disservice to everyone. I want to leave room and give space for our students to talk about that and then talk about how they can develop their own goals for the year in addition to what they're going to do. So kids are going to be a part of this process as well, but I want them to have space to talk about it and what it was like for students not to see their friends every day. And then how can we use that to capitalize and make this the best year yet? So making 2021 school year the best year yet. And that's going to be our goal as a school. And then individually, we're going to set our own goals for that. I haven't finalized all of the details about it, but I know that I am definitely going to give room for us all as a staff and then as a school community to talk about what just happened and how we survived it and then how it affected them and then moving on from that. I really feel like that awareness is essential and it's important. From the littlest of kids to the grown to the oldest person in the building, we all need to have just a space, a family forum, if you will, just to talk about what happened and how we're going to pull together even closer and move forward together as a school community.
I would echo that. No, that's great that you're doing that. So you said it earlier too. You know, the worst thing we could do is think that this is going to be go back to normal. We don't want to go back to normal because people are still being left behind. We need to create a new normal in this space. So really tending to, excuse the jargon, but the social emotional needs of children and their families. So really just leaning in and listening. I think one of the things that this time, I'm always an optimist, Marcus. So I look for, you know, as a good Christian man, I always, you know, Lord always makes diamonds out the rough, right? So out of this, one thing that Ms. Jackson highlighted with her engagement with teachers is the very thing that we have been trying to figure out, we're starting to figure out individualized engagement of students in learning. So as I hear Ms. Pilgrim speak about that, and where children to be able to make their own goals, you know, we're going to have to continue to figure this out, but this time has expedited that as educators go beyond the regular school hours. We're going to have to figure out what that really looks like. I think there's a few scenarios going back that we'll have to think about. One is like if schools just reopen, what? How do you social distance? Lily from National Education Association, I saw on CNN, she said, "How do you social distance with 39 kids in a room?" Right? So if schools are suddenly reopen, what does that look like? If schools reopen and have to reclose, how do we transition that back? And if schools don't reopen, I think creating at least three different plans and scenarios, but all of them beginning where Ms. Pilgrim had just shared with us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that, and I know we're nearing the end of our time together, and so I'll start with Ms. Jackson, but just kind of want to give all of you an opportunity to just give final words for those folks who are watching, for our education leaders. I think you guys have given plenty of reason why we need more bold investment in the community school model now more than ever. But if there's anything left to say, right, if there are our education leaders or community members who want to advocate, what would you say are the most important things that they should remember walking away from this conversation? And then how do we support the growth of this model across our city? Ms. Jackson.
Communicate, speak on whatever you need help with, be real, always go to someone in the school. They help. Trust me. I never would have thought the help that I got from Burtville I would ever got from the school. They're more of a family than my own family. I love my family, don't get me wrong, but that's my new family. And I love Burtville and I love the way they communicate. So parents, if you have any issues with anything going on with any child, no matter what their age is, please go to the principal and have a conversation. Communication helps the school move so much smoothly. You get your help with whatever you need with. They help the children whatever they need, and they direct you in the right direction wherever you need to go.
I'll just
Oh yeah, Jose.
I'll piggyback off Ms. Jackson, the communication. You heard my 3 C's earlier. Communication, collaboration. Make sure there's a lot of coordination of that, so you're making sure you're not missing the children who haven't been reached, and then always thinking of a better way every day to serve children and their families. That continuous improvement piece.
To piggyback off of you, I always think that one parent can help another parent also.
Absolutely. Principal Pilgrim.
They said it. I mean, I feel like communication is definitely the key to this all. We can do but so much, and I would tell parents that often, like, if I don't know how to help. So I want you to tell me. I feel like there's no problem too big or too small. If I know, we can jump on it. We have people here that are willing to go above and beyond, and I believe it goes two ways, and I appreciate just the way that we have, like, we really have destroyed walls. Like, folks feel comfortable. Like, it's not you got to talk to 5 people before talking to the principal. No, you can talk to me every day. I'm here. And so I appreciate that. Like, it's hands-on. And as Ms. Jackson said, be real. We don't have time for anything else. This is what it is. It's about the work. And we don't need the fluff. It's really about the work. We really want to know what the need is so we can address it. And that's just really what sums it all up for me. Be real about it.
And Marcus, if I could add one more thing from a system standpoint, and I know that you're a big advocate for this, and so are other members of some decision makers in DC is too. It's just feel the need that Ms. Jackson shared. Make sure that children can transition with the same type of care, same type of communication that they received from when they began. That this is not just a middle school strategy or elementary school strategy. People often say, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Well, eventually there is a completion to the marathon. So if we start in middle school or elementary school or community schools, we got to have middle schools, we got to have high